So thanks, first of all, to Dave for making the term geeks cool. I feel much more comfortable calling myself a data geek now that Dave's created Geeks on a Plane and many other such things. So I'm going to talk about A/B testing and how you can create a culture, a positive culture around A/B testing. I'm guessing if you're here that you probably should be A/B testing things in your product. There are a lot of other things that you also know you should do, and from exercising more to wearing sunscreen, and you may or may not do these things. I'm not gonna lecture you about sunscreen, but I think that if you do a handful of things well within your company, you can create a positive culture in which people will A/B test, and they'll A/B test in a manner that is actually beneficial to the company, to the business, to the product, to users. And the first thing that you need to do to get there is to embrace the spirit of I don't know everything. I don't know what's going to work. And fundamentally, that means we have several ideas about what might work for this specific feature, for this specific goal, and we don't know which one is going to be more effective. And OkCupid, as you may have seen, told this story a little bit more bluntly than I might have chosen to, by saying we experiment on human beings. I don't know that I would frame it that strongly, but I think that their underlying message that if you really want to get the right answer to something, you need to try different ways of doing it. That's kind of the right spirit. So that's the first thing. Second thing is that you need to have data, and you need to pick the metrics that you're actually going after. And so what does that mean? Well, first of all, you need people using your product. You can't have 5 users. You need to have more scale than that. And then you need to have some level of agreement within the company about the metrics that you care about. If you're A/B testing but you don't know the important metrics, it's not going to do you much good. So my new startup is called Laserlike. We have about 60 users, and we've never run an A/B test, which on the surface makes me not a very good candidate to give this talk. But I've actually run quite a few A/B tests in previous startups, and I know that Laserlike will run many A/B tests in the future when we have more users. And the key thing to keep in mind is that you probably need at least a few hundred instances of a test, and that could mean people, and it could mean emails that you're sending out. It could mean groups. In order to get significant results. And what do I mean by significant results? Well, on one hand, there's statistical significance, and statistical significance matters, but what's really more important is having business significance. And what I mean by business significance is if the cumulative effect of all of your A/B tests is great, and you get the results that you're hoping for, but at the end of that process, your business is still lousy and it's still in the place that it was before, either you shouldn't be testing, or you should be focusing elsewhere. You shouldn't be running little tiny A/B tests that aren't going to make a cumulative effect on your business. So knowing what you want to optimize is a big thing. And when you decide on a few variables, and I'm not going to get into that. I think it's a separate conversation, but if you know that there are, these are the 3 or 4 or 5 or even more than that variables that you care about, you should probably be running tests to improve it. And in my last startup called Circle of Moms, we would regularly have periods where a small portion of the team was focused on one specific variable, and they said, we want to look at, for instance, the percentage of people who, after performing an action, are performing that same action again within a week to try to create regular behavior around certain kinds of activity. And their focus was how do we optimize that number? and they were running lots and lots of A/B tests to try to optimize that. And we might do that for a month, and then for a month we focus on some other variable. And having clarity around the things that you want to test and that you want to optimize for is very important, because otherwise you can test different things, but you don't really know where you're going and what you're trying to optimize for. And if it's not important, you shouldn't be wasting time A/B testing it anyway. And so a given test, most kinds of tests, and I'm going to get into different types of tests, should be focused on one or two variables. So the third thing you need to have clear process and technology for testing. And so what does that mean? First of all, if you're rolling out a new feature, you should probably roll it out to a small subset of your users, and that might be tens or hundreds of thousands of users. If you have a very large audience, sometimes you can get faster results by rolling something out to a larger percentage of people. And then the question there is as to whether you should do more people and get faster results, or fewer people and get results more slowly, is what's the effect of moving back and forth with an A/B test. So what I mean by that is, if you're changing your homepage every day based on A/B tests, it's going to be jarring to users. If you're changing something in your sign-up flow, users only see that once, and so it's not really jarring to them. The fact that user A is getting one thing and user B is getting something else is not a big deal, and so you probably could just as well say, we're going to test this 50-50 for one day, rather than we're going to test it 99-1 for a month or two. So second thing, if you are changing a major piece of your site, I advocate changing A/B testing that across the board. And sometimes companies will have the mindset that our new homepage just looks better. It's better. Our old one sucked. Time and again, I've seen cases where people thought that the old version was not very good, and that the new version looks a lot nicer. And they change to the new version, and then they see a bunch of stats tanking. And there are things that they didn't think about that users were doing on the old homepage, things that worked that no longer work anymore. And so I'm a strong believer that any real change that you make to your site, you need to be A/B testing. And then finally, on your team, it's important that everybody be running A/B tests. Anybody who's touching the product should be running tests themselves, and it's something that we did on our team at Circle of Moms. Every single engineer was regularly running tests, and if you were pushing out a new feature, you were responsible for making an A/B test to show that feature versus not show that feature, or new design. You test having that design versus not having that design. And it's important that everybody buys into that, and that it's not just that you have one guy who's the A/B tester and everybody else kind of does their own stuff, but that everyone buys in. So in terms of A/B testing technology, I'm a pretty firm believer that you should be rolling your own, and that there are a lot of advantages there to owning the data yourself. As long as you are at significant scale. And the analogy that I use is WordPress. If you're, I use WordPress for my personal blog because I don't need to have that much control. I'm just putting text out there. But if you want to get to a certain scale, if you pride yourself on being a company of technologists, you need to be storing your testing results yourself and interpreting them through your database, through your own technology. They're just things that you can't do with commercial providers. But that means building something that allows you to run an A/B test with just a couple lines of code, and then you should be able to see. And it's a little bit small. I'm guessing that most of you can't see it, but this is what Circle of Moms A/B test results page, or a piece of Circle of Moms A/B test results page looks like, which is there are two versions of a test, and you can see how many views of the homepage there were for version A versus version B, how many unique viewers of the homepage there were for version A versus version B. Same thing for two other pages. And this continues on for quite a while. And you may be making decisions mostly off of one or two variables, but you should be able to see, for this given test, what are the long-term effects across 20, 30, 100 variables. So math is an important part of what you should be A/B testing. And the way to think about this is to ask, well, what's the likelihood that your test is going to have a real effect, and how big might that effect be? And if the product of that is small, you probably should be focusing your time elsewhere. If you can't measure the change, it's a problem. If you're too small, as I said, it's not really worth it to A/B test. And so that's important. But then, as I showed you in the last slide, you want to optimize on one variable, but you should look at the effect across many variables. So that last slide was this is what if you're doing a specific tweak and you're changing a button color. On the other hand, if you're changing your homepage and you think we have a homepage that is new and we think it's much better, but we're not quite sure, there you're not as concerned with, let's see if we can increase something by 1%. You're making a bet that your design team has done a whole bunch of work to craft a much nicer homepage, and you want to see what's the effect of this new homepage. Is it likely that there's a real negative effect? Could it be a big effect? And then you want to validate that this new page actually works as well as you hope it does. And there, what I call holistic A/B testing, where you're looking at the effect of of a change across many variables, is really important. So when you compare two different home pages, chances are there are going to be some variables that go up, there are going to be some variables that go down, and you may at a certain point you may say, well, we're okay with the fact that these three variables have gone up. Or these three variables have gone down because these other five have gone up, and we're comfortable with that change. Or it may even be the case that you have a bunch of things that have gone down, but you're making an informed decision. The key thing is that you're making an informed decision, and you're not saying, well, we're just going to shift over to this new page because we think it looks nicer. You actually have a holistic sense of what's working and what's not. Something I haven't seen a lot of people doing that was pretty effective for us at Circle of Moms was A/B testing for quality. And what I mean by that is that you actually want to get higher quality content. And we had a message board where people would ask questions, and we noticed that there were a decent percentage of them that were very short and not descriptive. And the example here is, my son's foot has a rash, what's the problem? There's just not enough information for somebody to give an intelligent response. And we wanted to figure out, well, how can we get people to ask better questions? And the way that we did this was we tested warning users and basically putting a pop-up after they typed in that question, saying something like, give more detail and you'll get better answers. And our goal there was not to get more questions. In fact, we knew that warning people in this way would probably generate fewer questions, but it was to get higher quality questions while hopefully not decreasing the number of questions too much. And so rather than looking strictly at quantities, we pulled all the questions that were asked in version A, we pulled all the questions that were asked in version B, we stuck them into a spreadsheet, and we had somebody go through and evaluate and say, this is high quality or this is low quality. And we looked at the quality for the A, and the person who was evaluating them didn't know whether the user had gotten version A or version B. And we looked at the overall quality for A and the overall quality for B, and we saw that when we warned people, it decreased questions being asked by 5% or so, but it made people much more likely to have high quality questions. So then there's also math in how do you pick winners, and there are a couple components to this. There's all kinds of literature on statistical significance. That's relevant and it's important to understand. but it's also important to think about what the business consequences are and to say, to realize that there are times when you should be making decisions even if something isn't statistically significant, and there are times when you should have very high thresholds of statistical significance. And the examples I use for this, one, if you're sending out an end-of-year email, as we would send at Circle of Moms, here are the most popular baby names. You know you have a limited time horizon. You know you're only going to send a limited number of emails. And so if you wait until you've sent 95% of emails to resolve the test, you're not really getting much value out of that A/B test, because only 5% of people are actually seeing the optimized version. And so there, resolving early makes sense. On the other hand, if you're Facebook and you're testing something in the sign-up flow and you know that you're going to have millions and millions more users, you should be a little bit more careful and wait to resolve that test. Second area where the math matters is in longitudinal tests, where you want to see the effect of something over a long period of time, such as changing a home page or emailing people much more frequently or much less frequently. You're not just looking at what's the effect over the next 5 minutes. On the other hand, presumably if you change a button color or you change an email subject, it's not as likely to have a big impact on how people perceive your product. And so you can resolve it a little bit more quickly, and you can say, well, what's the effect on activity just after they see this version? And automatically resolving tests is something that's nice to do from a technology perspective. It sort of streamlines the process a lot rather than having somebody look at the results and saying, yep, choose A. Longitudinal tests, it doesn't make sense to automatically resolve. I would never change the home page completely based on something automated. On the other hand, changing email subjects, especially if they're email subjects that are only valid for today, automatically changing, resolving those tests can be very, very valuable to a business. Choosing robust statistics is also extremely important, and that's a little bit hard. But what I mean by that is something like page views can be skewed significantly by a few people who view huge numbers of pages. And so if you look at page views and you say on side A there were 10,000 page views and on side B there were 9,000, and if it turns out that on side A one person viewed 1,500 pages, the test is not going to be that relevant. So instead I would look at something like what percentage of users viewed at least X pages, and that's going to be more robust. Same kind of thing with how many sales did you do. The numbers there might be very small, whereas the number of people getting to the second page in a funnel, the third page in a funnel, may be larger, and you can have more significant results. Finally, it's important to celebrate A/B testing successes, and A/B testing should be something that's fun. And this is what we showed at Circle of Moms when a test was statistically significant. Was our designer Doug, who was very happy that this test was significant. So I think I have a couple minutes for questions. 2 minutes for questions. Yeah.
So it's relatively easy to collect the data, but what tools would you recommend to analyze and visualize the data?
So I would recommend. I've generally used like MySQL. I think it can work pretty well. I actually don't think you need to do a lot of visualization for this, because you're just looking at two different sides and you're comparing two numbers. It's not like you're looking at, I want to see day by day by day by day. I actually think that some systems that show you, well, here's the effect over time, can be misleading, because you see pretty graphs, but they show you stuff that's probably noise. And then you can sort of automate those sorts of things and run queries or develop software that automatically pulls in those results. Yeah. Yeah.
You mentioned that you like to build your own tools, but
Yeah.
some of the other technically challenged marketers in the room,
Yeah.
like me,
Yeah.
are there any tools that you can recommend
I think so. I think Optimizely is probably the best of what's out there. And like, if I wanted to test things for a site that, like, if I wanted to test things for my blog, that's probably what I would use. Yeah.
At Circle of Moms, when did you decide you were no longer small enough and you should be doing
We had before we had Circle of Moms, we had a Facebook app called Circle of Friends, which took off, and it was so quick that it was less than a month. So it was kind of a corner case. Thank you.